and welcome to the easternKicks podcast, a fortnightly magazine programme about East Asian film, led by me, Andrew Heskins, founder and grandmaster of easternKicks.com, and James Mudge, our leading writer.
Hey-o.
Each episode we'll be taking a look at the latest films, news and festivals, and often chatting to filmmakers and stars along the way. Welcome to our very first episode. We heard that the kids were doing this thing called a podcast. So about 2 decades later, we thought we'd clamber onto that bandwagon and see what all the fuss is about. Later on in this episode, we'll be taking a look at Ip Man 4 and chatting about some upcoming releases in what can only be called a shameless plug, and also some other things that you might find on streaming services. But for this first episode, we thought we'd introduce ourselves and answer a question we get asked an awful lot. Just how do we get into Asian film in the first place? Now, before I get started, I should explain what we like to do is have a good natter over a drink. Future episodes may well take place in our local.
Yes.
Speaking of which, what are you drinking this episode, James?
Well, since nobody can see me, I would say I'm drinking a very fine cask strength Laphroaig with 1 cube of ice. But as you can see, in reality, I'm drinking the famous grouse. Not the finest, but it's okay. And yourself?
And for me, it's left over from Christmas. It's from the Howling Hops,
Nice.
hashtag sponsorship available. And it's appropriately called Well Shot, Bourbon Barrel Aged Imperial Stout, 13%.
13%.
So there's a great opportunity that I might not make it to the end of the episode.
That is a very, very dark beer, I would say. That does look something like an evil version of Pepsi.
We will also be doing a partnership broadcast where we discuss beers and... no, we probably won't. But that's not that we're going into it there.
Well,
cheers. So let's get started. What got us into Asian film? And for me, it was definitely a couple of things I saw when I was about 5, 6, and going into 8. So this is in the mid-70s to the late 70s. And there were 2 programs that were on BBC Two, and this is for the youngsters won't even believe this, but those days when there were only 3 channels. And they were both actually the same. So there was one called The Water Margins that was based on the classic novel The Water Margins, also known as Outlaws of the Marsh. And a little later on, the one that people tend to remember is Monkey. Again, another classic Chinese novel known as Journey to the West as well.
Yeah.
And it was they both were done by Nippon TV. Quite high budget for the time. I think they were quite a big budget TV series from Japan. Rather incongruously Japanese, based on classic Chinese novels. And on top of that, they were dubbed into English and put on primetime television. They were dubbed by people who were people like Margie McColl's, Manuel from Fawlty Towers. So reasonable kind of actors. They weren't necessarily done in what could now be terms of particularly politically correct way. There was some quite terrible accents going on. At least The Water Margin had an introduction that had Quok. So the thing of it, they were on in quite prime time positions. So I remember, and my parents were pretty irresponsible, so they let me stay up quite late. Some of my earliest memories of television were being allowed to stay up late and watch the horror double bills on BBC Two.
Dr. Terror, House of Horror, or such like.
Yeah,
Was
there
that
was
later
the Oliver Reed werewolf one I remember watching now. So at this sort of similar time, maybe a little bit later, they would allow me to stay up and watch. The Goodies would be on at 9 p.m. on BBC Two. Also, Ripping Yarns had the same time slot.
I can't say I don't know that one.
Which is Michael Palin.
Okay, fair enough.
From Monty Python.
Yeah.
And The Water Margins would be on straight after.
Yeah.
So actually, when all you've got going on is news and various other programs, then it was quite prime time. And I really got into it. I think, what I didn't pick up on was all the influence from a lot of the... I think more so, less from Japanese cinema, but more so from the Shaw Brothers films, because the Shaw Brothers had done
both
Monkey and
Water Margin.
Water Margin. So that kind of wuxia vibe, really, I started to think, well, this is quite cool. I'm quite into this. Later on, I think Monkey was obviously much more played for laughs, had kind of a bit of overlap with some of the same cast members, obviously in very different roles, and yeah, I just really liked it. And I guess for me, I remember you couldn't avoid Bruce Lee in the 70s, particularly.
That's true.
You know, he was there everywhere, and you'd see his poster, and you'd see his poster in Saturday Night Fever, and stuff. You know, he was there. But and I remember I had a couple of poster magazines, but I don't think I ever
Poster magazines.
Yeah,
That's a throwback.
yeah, I don't remember actually seeing any of his films until the 80s when video started, the early 80s, and I remember really not liking them very much because they were very, very badly dubbed. This is when the big boss was called Fists of Fury, and Fists of Fury was called the Chinese Connection.
It was very confusing. And then you still had Fists of Fury 2, which was something else.
I thought Enter the Dragon was okay, but that wasn't. He was not an entry point into me actually being into Asian cinema. But it was when Channel 4 started, which was 82, 83, I think. So years into it, they did start showing Asian cinema. I remember them having Tetsuro on.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I think it was in the late 80s, which was, even now, is quite a baffling film to watch, but then we've had nothing to compare it with, was quite batshit crazy. But it was really when there was a season of films called The Chinese Ghost Story on Channel 4, late night, I think they were after midnight, during Christmas. They were all presented by Jonathan Ross when he still had a modicum of credibility.
Long time ago.
And just really enjoying them. And, you know, just there, I remember they had Zoo of the Warriors from Magic Mountain, there was Mr. Vampire, and there was Rouge. And I always kind of quote Rouge as being the point where I just decided that, yes, for me, Hong Kong cinema had everything that I would want to watch, that I would want to see in a film.
Yeah.
Because the Rouge had a lot more, it's very different. Intelligence to it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people go back to Rouge hearing that it's a ghost story, or hearing the cast and everything. They expect something quite different from it, but it's very different to the other ones at the time, for sure. And
just, and there was something, I think, for me, I could just tell there was something for everyone. So you had the Zoo Warriors from Magic Mountain was kind of very much calling back to kind of monkey madness. Mr. Vampire, you had sort of this kind of martial arts thing, but lots of great physical comedy just going through. And then Rouge with the kind of intelligence and this kind of beautifully shot.
New wave art house type.
That's why it was such a big deal for me when as a member of the Chinese Visual Festival team, we got to bring Stanley Kwan.
That was amazing, yeah.
Over and Screen Rouge, but that's the film that really got me into it. And then they would carry on. They were doing Fong Shou-yuk films. They had various Jackie Chan, Police Story. All these films that they were screening on a regular basis, and it was more that than I don't really necessarily have access to video. I think at that point, and the releases wherever they were going on, probably into the mid-90s, and some of that will be Laserdiscs rather than
Laserdiscs. There we go.
Rather than VHS.
You took a few minutes before you mentioned Laserdisc, at least.
I mean, that was what started it, and then I got interested into Japanese cinema, and then the noughties, the late nice early noughties. There's all the Korean cinema and Filipino and all that. It just kind of spread through kind of looking at East Asian cinema, but it was definitely kind of Hong Kong cinema that got me into it. Yeah, really got me into it in the first place. So how about you, James?
Well, sure. I mean, being only slightly younger and everything, I still remember seeing the the Hong Kong ghost ones on Channel 4. And I'd seen Drunken Master before that, and I guess Drunken Master was the first one. And I enjoyed it very much. Obviously, it was the fantastic English dubbing, one of the early versions of it. So it wasn't my favorite film, but I think probably when it shifted was early 90s, I guess, when John Woo did Hard Target with old JCVD. Obviously other people had been over, like Ringo Lam had done some stuff over before that with in the States before. Was that before Hard Target or was it after Hard Target?
I think it was after.
Maybe it was after.
Yeah.
But Hard Target was the first one. And it was kind of partly because at the time I was very into the whole UK video nasties type of thing. So I was doing a lot of it's a strange thing to say, is like tape trading, which again younger people are going to be like, no, but trading VHS tapes at car boot sales, everything like that, to get hold of like the old Italian horror films. It was
really a thing in the 90s as well.
The early 90s it was huge still.
And there'd be copies of copies.
And that's
absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Faxer are probably listening to this and they're writing our names down right now. And there'll be a knock at the door.
Change the tracking to try and pretend yourself it was an okay copy. Some old Fulci.
It never really
zombie flesh eaters, whatnot. So of course,
it's another discussion, but there is a beauty of watching those films and that kind of really dirty, badly tracked kind of video with all the lines going across and.
But in those days, that still kind of led into the Asian cinema stuff as well. I mean, with Hard Target being produced by Sam Raimi, so that's obviously The Evil Dead. So that's kind of one of the reasons I kind of got onto that. And then from then, Hard Boiled came out, which I actually did manage to see in the cinema. I think in the GFT in Glasgow a long time ago. From there, that was the first of his films I actually saw properly. It was the first of his Hong Kong films. I saw The Killer, Better Tomorrow afterwards, which were obviously great, but still at that time being a very horror kid, I guess, about 14, 15, so horror teenager, I guess. From that, I kind of, some people started talking about this mysterious thing called the Bun Man. Like, the is the Bun Man? And they're like, oh, this, forget your Fulci and Argento. This is like, this is the most, bizarre and horrible thing you're going to see. And of course, turned out to be The Untold Story, which I managed to get like a 10th generation video copy of from somewhere, which is probably even worse than the DVD I still have of it. So it's nice to know that somebody is bringing out or has brought out like a remastered version recently.
I think that's in Germany though.
In Germany,
yeah,
okay.
Like last year or year before it's come out.
That's right. So yeah,
sadly no one's picked it up for the UK market.
Probably because we couldn't pass any form of censorship.
I don't know. I'm not necessarily sure that the British censorship is any worse or less strict than
that's
German.
true. No, that's a fair point. German is a lot, but with British, there's no chance that would get past. It didn't even get past Hong Kong censorship properly. They cut a lot. But from there, yeah, and after that, to Dr. Lamb, and then on to tracking down the most mysteriously named thing of all time, the guinea pig, and everything, getting that on tape when I was 15 or 16 or something. So, and from there, thankfully matured a lot more into watching a wider variety of stuff rather than just kind of like the hardcore horror ones. But it was the kind of horror connection through to John Woo, I guess. And then kind of going back into the martial arts stuff and rediscovering the Chinese ghost stuff, which you're talking about. And I think part of it is just seeing like the huge variety of stuff which is kind of out there. More, I think, sometimes than certainly at that time period there was more of a variety than there was in Western cinema. So, and I think that's what got me as well then. But the hardcore gore connection, I guess, is where it started on that.
And I think that's where we were. That's where we started.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And then
for me, my day job is a graphic designer, but I'd quite often bore people with my passion for Asian film. Yeah. And no, I think I did actually. But and then somebody said to me, "Why don't you put this on the web?" It was the start. It was the noughties. It was the start of the real kind of the whole web thing. And then I thought, actually, it's not a bad idea. And that's where easternKicks.com started.
How long's it going for easternKicks then?
It's
that's not a plug. I genuinely can't remember.
No, it's 17 and a half years, I think.
17 and a half. Jesus.
Yeah, July 2002.
Wow, that's incredible. Was that before or after Beyond Hollywood or something like that? Which I used to write for like a long, way back in a long defunct website. And
I'm not sure when Beyond Hollywood started. Probably about the same time, I think.
Probably.
Yeah.
That's a long time, man. Well, very nice.
There is very much a sense that I'm one of the last men standing. And you see these websites start, and there's lots of people around when I started, and then there was a whole load of them started disappearing, like Beyond Hollywood.
Yes,
and then I've been collecting up some of those people who were interested in Asian film.
Yeah.
Various people, and then I there's waves of it, and then new people, new.
And that's how I was collected.
Well, you were already going to write for us anyway, weren't you?
I met you like a screening of Dragon. Is that right?
a few times. There was a few.
That was the first time we had a proper chat about cinema and everything like that. As a screening of Wuxia Dragon. That was I'm pretty sure that was the first time we had a proper chat and got into the whole, shared love of the and the Asian cinema. We were talking about the different cuts of the film and everything like that, which most of the other people there didn't seem particularly bothered or interested about. I still found very interesting. So, I still find that baffling, but never mind.
So now for one of our regular features, which will be taking a closer look at a recent release.
Cool.
And for this episode, we're going to take a closer look at Ip Man 4. Where to start, James? Where to start? So what did you make of it, What did you think of Ip Man 4? Let's give it the full title, the finale.
Is it the finale? I was going to say final.
The final?
No, I think there was Ip Man 4, the final fight before, right? So which...
The finale,
I think this is the finale. I think no, you're right. This is the finale. This was, but I think there was.
Spoiler alert! And it will be difficult to come back from this, for Donnie Yen at least.
Well, why? Because during the whole film, he was supposed to be looking his 70s, and looks like he's 40.
Well, I don't want to give anything away, but it does end on a sudden finale type point for him. We've completely spoiled it for you. Forget you've said.
And just forget the word finale because it's not. It might not.
And there are the spin-offs with Master Z. And
yes, there are, which might be more interesting. But there's nothing there to suggest it would still even be the final film. All we need to do is flashback slightly. I mean, that's still one of the most bizarre things about this whole film, is that he's supposed to be elderly. And
he should be in his 70s.
Yes, early 70s or late 60s at best. And there's zero.
He's got a little bit of grey hair. And Donnie's being quite...
2 grey hairs.
He's got 2 grey hairs, which I would probably expect that Donnie's probably got by this time. He's not as young as he used to be. But also, and his demeanour is even more subdued than he has been previously.
So somber
as Ip Man.
I know. It's having read so much about the history of Ip Man and what he's done and everything. It's just so much of it just doesn't bear that much resemblance, visually or in terms of the plot to actually the story of Ip Man.
So we should say what the story of Ip Man 4 is before we go into talking about it.
Man. I honestly, he fought a bunch of very super angry white dudes who all said how much they hated China, and he went.
And all are completely racist in the most cartoonist terms.
Yeah, and I should say, being like Scottish, I curse the English Empire, not the British Empire, but it's it's cartoonish, it's nonsense. I mean, it's like literally everything that comes out of their mouth is, "My God, how much I hate Chinese people," or "My God, I hate martial arts, but I love karate."
The characters are played as being, properly racist against black people, against whatever. There are all this kind of stuff going on. So, as far as I understand it, so here we go. Here's the plot line. It's not massively different from any of the previous Ip Man films. In a very convoluted way, our main man, Ip Man, ends up in San Francisco, basically looking for a place for his kid to go to school.
His wayward kid, yeah.
His wayward kid. I mean, what's quite interesting about this is...
He's not very wayward, but yeah.
He's not massively wayward. He just wants to lock himself in his bedroom. And if it wasn't the 60s, he would probably be on his iPad.
He'd been fine.
Watching YouTube videos. But as far as I can see, the plotline is he goes to this school, wants to get into this nice school, and then runs in with some racist Marines, and then proves to them how amazing Chinese Kung Fu is versus what they seem to love, which is karate. And we this has been the ongoing. I mean, at least in Ip Man 2 we had boxing. Ip Man
1 and 2 are good. I mean, Ip Man 3. I mean, Mike Tyson, God bless him, he's as good.
He's got the lift.
But he's as good in that as he is in The Hangover. So it's.
I mean, he's obviously enjoying the thing.
I thought he was fine.
Whereas in this one, we've got Scott
fine.
Atkins and Chris Collins as the kind of lead kind of white bad guys.
And they just, it's like I say, man. You know, I'm the first person to say, like, you know, having some condemnations of like colonialism or whatnot. It's fantastic. Yeah, white bad guys, you know, Western bad guys. I mean, outstanding. I'm not against that, but they just every single thing is like, I hate China. I hate Kung Fu. It's just,
it's very, very. I mean, like I say, it's very cartoonish. It's very simplistic, and I think you can make stuff like that actually properly powerful. But a lot of that's about the language that people use and the way it's dealt with,
or you could
rather than just do a cartoonish thing and go, oh, but hang on.
No, that's true. Or,
look at how amazing it can be. Yes.
Or that kind of cartoonish stuff. Like if it was, I mean, there's two things there, I guess. Like, I mean, one, we have the Chinese nationalistic angle, which is one thing, which I don't really have too much of a problem with compared to like Michael Bay films and everything, whatever. Put that to one side, but it's still like just the level of villainry. I mean, this is like sub DVD. I mean, this is like even Netflix would be like, oh my god, man, this is like, it's nonsense, man. You know, if you're gonna have a proper villain who's, you know, some racist English or American army guy, totally fine. But don't just spend the whole film screaming at people and everything. And it's not the actor's fault, but I do think, you know, on a producer kind of level, this comes down to still like having a script. Probably, you know, translated with Chinese director and everything still, and it's a very difficult process to actually make a film like this. But when you have a very big budget, comparatively film like this,
or at least you expect it to have a big budget.
But they don't really care too much about, you know, the English market or the Western market for this one. It's even though they have the Western people in there, this is still a film for mainland China.
It feels like a throwback to. I mean,
this was a film for mainland China.
Yeah, and the Western acting.
Which is okay though.
It's okay just because some of those guys are really throwing themselves into kind of being that role, but it's still quite
90s style Hong Kong. So I'm like, damn you Chinese pigs, and kicked out a glass window. Yeah, which is, you know,
it's kind of once upon a China free kind of.
Which I think is 100% fine. Like, but I think with this film, like it comes with this kind of weird weight of, you know, still like quality. Or something too. And if this was like a straight to DVD,
straight to streaming,
straight
or whatever
to
the equivalent is nowadays. We're old guys. Do get it right. We're old guys. We don't know these newfangled things.
Indeed.
Give it to us on a VHS or a Laserdisc, you know, all right.
But you know what I mean, though. Like, if this was one of those old school films, I don't think it'd be so much of a problem. But this is like Ip Man 4. It has a big budget, the big stars. It's it's an international release and something. And I'm not saying for like even half a second that they should really care. Oh, Western audience will be offended by showing, you know, sort of Western bad guy. But you know, at least make them like semi-believable bad guys instead of just having them. Every single thing they scream is how much they hate China, how much they hate Kung Fu. It's, you know, it's a nonsense, man.
While doing karate.
While doing karate, exactly. And some of the lines in there as well. I mean, you know, without saying too much about working in like production and stuff, like it is a very difficult thing where you have a script being shot by a co-production like between different countries and a different script, and you know it is a tough thing, but the lines in the film are nonsense. It's just gibberish, some of the stuff that you have the Western characters actually saying. And whereas, you know, when we look back on some of the stuff in the 90s and all, you know, it's pretty funny seeing that stuff or seeing some of the subtitles and everything. For this kind of film, they should have made more effort. There's literally no reason for them not to. It could have taken them 10 seconds to find somebody, like a Western production partner, or somebody to actually, you know, come up with, okay, this is the right locations. This is, you know.
Which is another point about this, is that a lot of it is shot in the UK.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, most of it was shot in the UK in the end. And it's...
Which is, in itself, quite distracting.
I mean, for anyone from the UK, I mean, I don't want to rant too much about it,
but go ahead.
Yeah, I might, like, but no, it's like half of the film was like Ip Man cutting about in like Northern England, like Lancashire, and they have the whole scene,
which is by the way meant to be San Francisco.
Yes, that exactly. It's supposed to be. This is supposed to be sunny San Francisco. We have Ip Man cutting around like Lancashire, like, you know, and you have a bunch of school kids coming over who are still wearing like English school uniforms.
And the secondary school is very. It does look like a kind of
a council
50s kind of secondary school.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not very convincing as something you would expect to see out in San Francisco. Worse, I mean, the standout scene for me is when they're on a bus, and I'm quite impressed.
The bus, yes.
I'm quite impressed that they actually filmed the bus. They didn't find some stock footage from San Francisco.
Why? Yeah, why not? Why not?
And also, they actually obviously shot dialogue on the bus as it was running along, but you watch it and it is running along roads that look very quintessentially Northern England, brick walls via both sides. I mean, I think the other thing for me is it's San Francisco, and I'm thinking, where are the hills? Where's the hills?
Where's the sunshine? Where's the?
Well, they've got that little effect of doing all the kind of the post production and making it
not
look savvy.
much.
Not particularly, because every Ip Man film has that sort of slightly kind of green kind of cast that they kind of put onto stuff.
Which made sense previously, but not in this film.
But in this one,
it's just nonsense. Man.
Yeah, I mean, they tried to put a bit of sun on there in the post production.
Sun in Northern England.
Yeah.
There you go. The film audience was like 80% like mainland China, which by all accounts is done very well in. So why worry about the bunch of people in the UK?
Yeah.
Who actually recognise the location.
Or San Francisco possibly as well, going, what the hell?
Sure, yeah, exactly. Saying, wait, this is San Francisco, man. That's not San Francisco. It's Lancashire, lad. No, so I agree with that.
They wouldn't even recognise it.
Either way, it's a terrible
I think it was
film.
It's
a terrible film anyway.
So,
I got nothing for that.
But look,
very disappointed, I would say, about it as well. I was looking forward to it.
I mean, I should say that it has quite a high rating on
does.
IMDb at the moment.
But
it's like 7.5, 7.6.
Mainstream media all really reviewed it quite well, which I was pretty surprised by.
I can't see why. The sort of fighting and tournament scenes are all very, very convoluted.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think all the fighting is actually those fight scenes, which is what you watch these films for.
Yeah.
Is that amazing? So I think with a lot of the films, the finale fight is actually the most disappointing. It's like,
but for these ones, I mean, at least it was Mike Tyson when he took him on, man. I mean, that was.
I mean, a lot of it seems to be about making Scott Atkins look good rather than anybody of
he's
other
too
kind of
angry. I mean, Scott Atkins is fine, man. He's done a lot of good stuff, but in this, he's just like the entire way through the goddamn film.
Again,
even like where they shot some of those scenes, it just doesn't. None of it makes any sense in terms of like an actual. Why would you have a duel there? Why would you have? I mean, really? I mean, this is just nonsense.
And also, it seems almost kind of redundant to say this, but any biographical accuracy is completely out of this equation.
2 grey hairs.
And I don't think any of these Ip Man films have been close to what actually happened.
No, but the 1 and 2 were. I mean, one was still. No, I mean not close, not close, but it was what you would call like a nice biopic. I mean, of course, you're going to change the details, but 1 was dope for that. 2 was still pretty good. 3 was the cutoff point where they just went for something more commercial for the mainland audience and for an international audience. Mike Tyson won it, but it was still fun. It was not a good film, but it's a lot of fun.
The accuracy of this, I mean, I think the son that we're talking about, as he's played in this film. Although it doesn't say it, I mean, it suggests it's one of his sons with his first wife, but we don't talk about.
Of course,
we don't actually talk about his mistress.
His
mistress is yes, indeed. But the main, the main one, and I actually with the age, I would think that this is actually the son of his mistress, not his actual. Because if this is, I think if it's who it's meant to be, then. They would be way too old to be looking at secondary school, higher education in the States. It's and I accept what the hell does that do with an entertaining film? Every biographical film has done stuff, but this is so far away from anything real. And then to try and it really struggles to grasp at any kind of relevance by having at the very end going, and then in the 70s. The US Marines thought that Chinese martial arts were a good thing to do. Right. And that's probably would that have anything to do with the massive popularity of martial art films? Being sent out by studios like Warner Brothers and so on, acquiring them from Shaw Brothers, and Golden Harvest, and put them out in the early 70s, and the massive scene there was behind that, maybe more than there is behind Ip Man and this completely fictitious scene that has absolutely no relevance.
But he spent a lot of the time like obviously fighting against other like martial arts masters, even when he was in San Francisco and stuff. So no, it's like no, he never fought anybody apart from Scott Adkins. It's a shame because on the one hand, like Hollywood franchises are not exactly praiseworthy and everything, but when we come to the franchise of this, which has been so popular ever, I don't really want to be nasty about it, but it's just this film was no. And I really wanted to like it as well. I'm genuinely looking forward to actually watching it, and oh man, I can't back it off.
We're now going to take a look at some of the new releases over the next couple of weeks,
right.
And also stuff that I think that we found on streaming services. So, should we kick off?
On streaming services, by which we're mainly talking about Netflix and Amazon. Yeah, Dead Kids, I guess, was probably one of the most interesting things we actually saw turning up recently, which the very, very young Mikael Red.
Yeah, he's probably not quite so young as some of your reviews have said. I don't know. He's still sort of mid to late 20s, isn't he?
Mid to late 20s! How dare you, sir? Oh my God. I'm in my early 30s for the record. No, that's not true. But but fantastic. I thought it was.
So tell me, what's the film about? And what's good about it?
It's kind of like a real life story about like a caper, with some young kids, like social class divide, and I don't want to say too much about it because it's got that kind of Hitchcock vibe where things progress in a very nice way, and it's quite short, it's quite taut, it's and for me this is one of those.
We do have, let's face it, we do have a bit of a sort of 90-100 minute rule, don't we?
Well, I think so. I would totally agree with that. Like 90 minutes or 4 hours. That's it. Nothing in between. Well, you know what I mean. But for this film as well, I think it's got a very nice kind of economic lens to it. The twists play out very nicely. It's obviously not made on a very high budget, but I don't know, it works very well for what it actually does. And I think Netflix is a great platform for it, because let's be honest, no one in the UK is going to buy that film.
And, I mean, the thing is, he's a very, very consistent director. Everything he does is actually
I wasn't crazy about Eerie, but...
But Birdshot and
excellent film.
I mean, he's
Eerie. Sorry, I feel a bit shit about saying that about Eerie, but it was just but it's dope. I mean, like on the one hand, like for Dead Kids, it takes that what's kind of a familiar plot and does something very fresh with it. I think Eerie took a usual plot and kind of made it like a Philippines version of it, which is not a bad thing at all. But for general audiences seeing it on Netflix, it's not that different to stuff. Still a very solid film.
But I think most of his stuff's on Netflix, isn't it? I think Birdshot and...
It is, and I think that's a fantastic platform.
Neo Manila and
yes, all great films as well. But,
so I mean, we could definitely kind of recommend, if you've got Netflix, then you should probably check out the whole back catalogue of Mikael Red.
We're not recommending Netflix directly, but we're
recommending his
Mikael
work. Mind you, # sponsorship available if you want to.
That is very true.
Yeah.
But no. I mean, I thought I really liked Dead Kids. Even just like the way it was lit and some of the shots and everything. It was made for, I'm assuming like a fairly low budget, but like the different, very, very creative use of different sets. Everything like that. The young cast were all very good, but it moves quite fast. It's a nice pace for everything. Good film, man. I liked it.
I know that The Farewell is coming out on UK
nice
DVD and Blu-ray.
I enjoyed The Farewell very much, man. Very nice.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of easternKicks' top films for last year, number 3. So
what was number 1?
Parasite, obviously.
Okay, we'll do.
We'll come back to that. And
I like The Farewell. It was a very nice film. I thought. Awkwafina. She was excellent in that film. Really good. And I thought the writing...
his writing is nice. It's a
very
nicely paced film. It is... It's interesting in it. I mean, it's kind of a US film. Most of it is actually in.
Well, and that's kind of the key. That actually having that. I mean, speaking myself, kind of working in like co-production for a few years is impossible almost. But they did a fantastic job to actually get the Western Chinese culture into one film.
Very, very genuine in its depiction of
100%.
the town that she comes from, her family comes from. But also this depiction of Asian American in their case, and it's very much, I think, on that kind of wave of there is stuff, it's a kind of the positive of kind of Crazy Rich Asians effect and Fresh Off the Boat and things. Well, not maybe that, but
or we hate each other. I completely.
But
totally agree.
that there are these stories that can be told,
Absolutely.
and it could be American Asians, but British Asians as well. But of that culture, but are actually really interesting and are actually interesting enough to be put on as be cinema releases, to be.
I think with this film as well,
mainstream releases.
I think this is one of the things where it kind of. I would say it kind of highlights the influence of film festivals and other people as well. I mean, we had like the farewell at like Sundance, and then all the mad buzz around it and everything. That's kind of like a big seal of approval. And like you say, it is kind of it's a culturally at least it's having that kind of thing, which it brought out a lot of audiences. Like I would say people like not being cynical, like the Guardian readers, independent readers who pretend to watch like foreign language films but don't really. And I think this kind of brings them out. No, it's true, man.
Yeah.
But this brings them out, and it's genuinely a warm story. It's a very human story.
It's a lovely story. It's a really lovely story. As I say,
really nice
built on a true lie, based on a true lie, and then you get
it's so nicely made as well. I mean, I think a lot of what we're getting for that film is still Awkward as performance, which is dope. It's a good performance, but I think Lulu Wang, her directing in that's amazing. Some of the the way she differentiates some of the scenes and the lighting and everything. It's
very well shot. In comparison with something like Crazy Rich Asians, which was
it's Crazy Rich Singaporean Asians, but yeah.
And I think that was the distinction, and that's why it didn't really ride very well in mainland China.
Well, they're shooting the next 2 sequels in mainland China. So
interesting. Okay. So one thing we should say is about, we are, as we've said before, we are both members of the Chinese Visual Festival team, and we've got some really exciting screenings coming up for Chinese New Year.
That's true.
James, would you like to kind of talk about some of the films we're screening and where we're screening them?
Yeah. I mean, we're like touring around the whole UK.
Which is a first for us. We've done some cities before, but never like this.
No, well, you're right. I mean, it's covering all of 4 cities.
That's big for us. That is big for us.
No, I mean it's pretty rad, man. We have in London we have the Wild Goose Lake with our good friends at Mubi. We have at the BFI we have Simon Yam's Little Q, where it was a big hit. He has he's blind. He has a guide dog. We have All's Well and Well, one of the biggest
absolute classics of.
What's the cast list?
So we've got Leslie Chow, Maggie Chow,
Stephen
Chow,
and others,
and many others. I mean, it is a.
But it's one. It was the one kind of kicked off the whole Lunar Year craze. Then we're also doing the Four Springs documentary, which I know is a big favourite of Andy Heskins.
I love it. It's it's a very. I almost want to use the word cute, but in the right way, because the couple that are central to it are just the cutest. I mean, I wish they were my parents.
Moving.
They are the cute. They're lovely. They're all very supportive. But it is moving as well. But they're very supportive. Nice. Beautifully done.
Yeah, it's so believable.
It's really it's so well done. I think I would say it's one of the kind of best.
And that's why it's one of the weird things. Like when it got released in China, it was getting backed by all the major Chinese stars. Everything were trending on what I've called social media. It was dope, man. But yeah, we're doing that as well. We're also doing The Wrath of Silence as well, which is came out a year or so ago. But that's
decent for it's got a really fantastic electronic kind of score. Actually,
it's a nice score. But
somebody needs to get back to that and release it on vinyl.
It's just one of those things. Like I kind of wish China would make more of these kind of like genre films that we always worry about like Chinese censorship, everything, but this film, I know there's like show that it's very possible to make like a really good, solid. It's still very gritty and like kind of, like you say, dope score like a thriller. Oh, but anyway, we're in London, Glasgow, Edinburgh, and
Lewis.
Which is not Brighton, but it's
not Brighton, but it's quite close.
So if you have to go to Brighton, that's fine. I'm sure there's trains.
There are always trains. So that brings us to the end of the episode. Mm-hmm. Next episode, we will be doing a Parasite special, which will be including my interview with the, dare I say, iconic Song Kang-ho.
You do? Yeah,
he is.
He is. I mean, who else are you going to talk about?
And we will be looking at the film in detail and doing a review of the film, and also the impact of whatever we think that is. So don't miss out. Subscribe to our podcast now via your favourite platform, be that iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or whatever. And remember, you can always find us on easternKicks.com and all the usual social networks, Facebook, Twitter, and so on. Let us know what you think about the podcast, but please don't be too harsh. This is our very first podcast, so we're new to this.
It's fine. Be harsh. We don't actually. It'd be okay. Constructive criticism.
Always good. And if you think there's anything we should cover in future, let us know.
We'll be very welcome for that.
Very welcome. And so, good night to you. Cheers.
Here's to yous.